Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and welcome to Eagle News International.
I'm CJ Hero. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now on today's headlines.
Deprived of his beloved campaign trail for 10 days by COVID-19, President Trump rallied supporters in Florida, vowing that he is in great shape with 22 days to go until he faces Joe Biden in the election.
China rushes to test an entire city of 9 million within days after a minor coronavirus outbreak, as the WHO warns that letting the pathogen run free to achieve herd immunity was scientifically and ethically problematic.
Johnson & Johnson says it has temporarily halted its COVID-19 vaccine trial because one participant has become sick.
U.S. researchers are training dogs to seek out asymptomatic people who are infected with COVID-19 by teaching them to smell the odor that comes off the infected person.
First, in the Philippines, members of the House of Representatives formally ratified the election of Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco as the new speaker. During a plenary session inside the Batasang Pambansa complex in Quezon City, a total of 186 lawmakers voted to ratify Velasco's election as the House's top leader, formally replacing Taguig Pateros Representative Alan Peter Cayetano. The ratification of the election was held to remove doubts about the validity of Velasco's assumption to the speakership post after he was named as the chamber's top leader during a remote session at the Celebrity Sports Plaza in Quezon City on Monday. Let's take a look.
Our President ordered Congress to resume the congressional deliberations on the proposed 2021 national budget and to avoid any further delays on the prompt passage thereof in accordance with the Constitution and applicable laws, rules, and regulations. As the head of a nation comprised of 109 million people, our President is voicing out the widespread sentiment that the interest of our people, especially at this time of COVID-19 pandemic and the concomitant crisis it has spawned, is being sacrificed before the altar.
With the tussle for speakership coming to an end, Taguig Pateros Representative Alan Peter Cayetano said he is leaving his post with a clear conscience, thanking his fellow House members for giving him the opportunity to serve as Speaker since July last year. Cayetano said much work still has to be done, especially in approving the proposed 2021 national budget, which contains the government's programs for the country to recover from the pandemic.
I'd like to tell everyone na pinaka-importante sa akin ay yung budget. Yung budget dapat ipasa, pero ang budget po ay dapat napakaganda. Kung problema ang budget, but instead of being part of the problem, I want to be part of the solution.
Under a term-sharing deal brokered by President Duterte, Cayetano would serve as the House Speaker for the first 15 months or until October 2020 or this year, while Velasco would take over and assume the position for the remaining 21 months until 18th Congress ends in 2022.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., kept off the campaign trail for 10 days by COVID-19, President Trump takes center stage again in Florida, saying he is in great shape with 22 days to go until he faces Joe Biden in the election.
We've made tremendous progress. If you look at what we're doing with therapeutics and, frankly, cures, we've made tremendous progress. And I said to my people, we are going to take whatever they gave me and we're going to distribute it around to hospitals and everyone's going to have the same thing. One thing with me, the nice part, I went through it, now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women and everybody. I'll just give you a big fat kiss.
President Trump's medical team announced he had tested negative and was no longer contagious as he jetted to Florida for the first of 4 battleground states he plans to visit over the next 4 days. Florida is among the 6 states with the largest number of electoral college votes, 29 out of the 538 up for grabs. Trailing his Democratic challenger Joe Biden by double digits in the polls, Trump is seeking to rally his base on a blitz of key swing states.
And staying in the U.S., President Trump's U.S. Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, faces a sharply divided Senate for her first question and answer session, with Republicans praising her faith and qualifications and Democrats set to bombard her over health care. The acute political fights were previewed in Monday's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, where lawmakers and Barrett gave opening statements under the shadow of the deadly coronavirus. Take a look.
But courts are not designed to solve every problem or right every wrong in our public life. The policy decisions and value judgments of government must be made by the political branches, elected by and accountable to the people. The public should not expect courts to do so, and courts should not try.
The Senate is wearing blinders to the grim realities facing Americans. Instead of talking about COVID and doing something to help the American people, we're engaged in this mad rush to fill a Supreme Court vacancy on the eve of a presidential election.
We're confirming the judge in an election year after the voting has occurred. What will happen is that my Democratic colleagues will say, this has never been done, and they're right in this regard. Nobody's, I think, has ever been confirmed in an election year past July. The bottom line is Justice Ginsburg, when asked about this several years ago, said that a president serves for 4 years, not 3. There's nothing unconstitutional about this process.
Not even always involving a hot button.
With just 22 days before the November 3 election, Democrats slammed the process as reckless and a sham amid a pandemic that has killed nearly 250,000 Americans. Barrett, a 48-year-old conservative, was tapped last month by President Trump to succeed liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died of cancer on September 18.
Most of this.
Still in the U.S., Democratic vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris, speaking by video link, slammed as reckless the decision to hold the hearing at all during a pandemic with 2 Republican panelists among a recent outbreak of COVID-19 cases linked to the White House. Let's listen in.
The decision to hold this hearing now is reckless and places facilities workers, janitorial staff, and congressional aides and Capitol Police at risk. Not to mention that while tens of millions of Americans are struggling to pay their bills, the Senate should be prioritizing coronavirus relief and providing financial support to those families.
And Democrats and their presidential candidate Joe Biden are demanding the nomination be left until after the election. Here's the former Vice President Joe Biden at a campaign event in Cincinnati, Ohio. Take a look.
Why do so many Republicans today have time to hold a hearing on the Supreme Court with 22 days left to go instead of providing significant economic recovery and needs for the people who are hurting so badly?
Democrats presented Barrett as a direct threat to the Affordable Care Act, with several voicing concern her appointment was being rammed through in time for the court to hear a challenge to the law on November 10.
In other news, the World Health Organization chief warned Monday against just allowing the new coronavirus to spread in the hope of achieving so-called herd immunity, saying it was unethical. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus cautioned against calls in some countries to let COVID-19 run its course until enough people develop the immunity needed to naturally halt its spread.
Fadila Shaib, speaking to you from Geneva.
Around the world, we're now seeing an increase in the number of reported cases of COVID-19, especially in Europe and the Americas. Each of the last 4 days has been the highest number of cases reported so far. Many cities and countries are also reporting an increase in hospitalizations and intensive care bed occupancy. Never in the history of public health has herd immunity been used as a strategy for responding to an outbreak, let alone a pandemic. It's scientifically and ethically problematic. Allowing a dangerous virus that we don't fully understand to run free is simply unethical. It's not an option. But we do have many options. There are many things that countries can do and are doing to control transmission and save lives. It's not a choice between letting the virus run free and shutting down our societies.
Clearly, as we've seen in all cases of rising incidents so far in this pandemic, that the incidence of hospitalization and deaths lags behind the incidence of cases themselves, and it takes a number of weeks usually for those numbers to feed through into the system. But we also recognise that within that, that lag has been over a longer period of time. And it may reflect a shift in the age distribution of cases, or at least of tested cases, with more disease in younger age groups who don't tend to be hospitalised or don't tend to have fatal outcomes. That's certainly it's certainly a factor. Like the UK, Ireland, and other countries, is hospitalisation rates increasing, ICU occupancy rising, and it's really important that health systems are able to cope with what will be an increasing number of cases in hospital and ICUs over the coming weeks. The question remains as to how many of those daily incident cases convert into hospitalizations and then into very seriously ill patients. And we don't know that. We don't know that for sure.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen launched an EU-wide coordination of measures restricting free movement in the European Union. Take a look.
Our proposal will bring a common color code based on common criteria. It will define all regions in the European Union based on the level of risk: red, orange, green. These colors will be reflected on one single map for all of the EU, so everyone can check online on our Reopen EU site. There will be no restrictions if you're traveling from a green region. When traveling from an orange or a red region, national governments may ask you to get tested or undergo quarantine. Governments will give clear and timely information before they introduce such measures. And those with an essential reason to travel, like transport workers, or those traveling for important family reasons, will not be required to undergo quarantine. This new system will make things easier for citizens.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson orders pubs in Liverpool to close after a new surge in cases in the country, which has the worst death toll in Europe. A new three-tiered system of alerts is also being put in place to try to bring order to a confused system of local restrictions, as staff at 3 field hospitals were told to prepare for a wave of admissions. Let's listen in.
We're entering a new and crucial phase in our fight against coronavirus. because the number of cases has gone up 4 times in 4 weeks, and it's once again spreading among the elderly and vulnerable. There are already more COVID patients in UK hospitals today than there were on the 23rd of March when the whole country went into lockdown, and deaths, alas, are also rising once again. These figures are flashing at us like dashboard warnings in a passenger jet, and we must act. So we're giving local authorities across England around £1 billion so they can protect vital services as they fight the virus. Nightingale hospitals across the north of England are being prepared for service. And so we can squash this virus wherever it appears, we are today simplifying, standardising, and in some places toughening local rules in England by introducing 3 levels of COVID alert. At a minimum, they will sadly include a ban on all social mixing between households in private places, including gardens, and pubs and bars must close unless they can operate solely as a restaurant serving alcohol only as part of a main meal. We will also ask people not to travel into and out of very high alert level areas.
It's catastrophic. I don't think there'll be many businesses after this lockdown will come back like they did last time. I think the general feeling in all of the hospitality is we've done everything that they've asked for, and to go to a second lockdown to me is just silly. It's the wrong decision.
Meanwhile, the British government faced renewed pressure on Tuesday after indications it had ignored scientific advice 3 weeks ago for tougher restrictions to cut rising coronavirus infections. The main opposition Labour Party said the government's failure to act was alarming and raised questions about the credibility of its latest plan to curb the virus's spread. England's chief medical officer Chris Whitty said he was not confident the latest measures announced by Prime Minister Boris Johnson could reverse the upward trend. Britain's death toll of more than 43,000 is the worst in Europe.
More than 3 million swabs have been taken in a matter of days in Qingdao, the Chinese port city where a minor coronavirus outbreak elicited a sweeping health response. Queues for testing stretched deep into Monday night across the eastern city, which detected 6 virus cases the day before, but swiftly swung into action to head off a wider outbreak. Qingdao's Health Commission said in a statement that, quote, as of 8 a.m., our city has taken 3.08 million samples for nucleic testing, with 1.11 million results received. In addition to 6 people with symptoms, there are 6 asymptomatic cases have been detected so far. The city declared it aims to test its entire population, around 9.4 million, within 5 days of the detection of the first cases at a hospital on Sunday. It wasn't immediately clear how fast results could be processed, although China has paraded its rapid testing capacities during previous minor outbreaks.
In other news, Russia reported on Tuesday its highest ever number of daily deaths and cases of people infected with COVID-19, fueling concerns that a second wave of the pandemic is hitting the country. There were 13,868 new infections and 244 virus deaths, the government's Coronavirus Crisis Center said, with both figures surpassing previous records set since the start of the outbreak. With the 4th highest infection tally in the world, Russia has recorded just under 23,000 fatalities since the start of the pandemic, a much lower figure compared to other badly hit countries. Officials have earlier said they are only counting deaths directly caused by the virus, leading critics to accuse Russia of underreporting COVID mortality to downplay the scale of the situation. Speaking to journalists on Monday, President Vladimir Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said more advanced treatment protocols are leading to a lower death rate. Although virus cases in Russia have been on the rise for several weeks, authorities are reluctant to again introduce strict lockdown measures.
And let's get the latest coronavirus situation in Australia. Joining us live is Morgan Goodfellow from our EBC Queensland Bureau. Hello, Morgan.
Good evening, Alma.
Hello there.
We bring you the latest updates on the COVID-19 situation in Australia. According to the Department of Health, as of 3 p.m. the 11th of October 2020, the total confirmed cases are 27,286, with an increase of 42 cases in 24 hours, a total of 898 deaths, and 24,869 recoveries. At the moment, the state of Victoria has 20,305 total confirmed cases, 186 being active, followed by New South Wales with 4,296 confirmed cases, 31 of which are active, and Queensland having no active cases. Traces of COVID-19 have been found throughout Townsville's sewage, sparking an investigation as to how the virus has made it into Townsville's wastewater. Concerns that 20% of infected people are able to have the virus pass through their system and spread without symptoms has left the state's Chief Health Officer, Janet Young, worried that they will not be able to retrace the virus's initial contact. Reports say that there are ships offshore of Townsville that could possibly release sewage, spreading it through Townsville's wastewater. Another theory is that possible postage and freight companies have travelled through Townsville spreading the virus. There is even speculation that a COVID-19 recovered patient has come out of quarantine and made their stay in Townsville. It is known that the virus is still shedding quite some time still after recovery, leaving remnants transmittable.
All right, thank you very much, Morgan, for your updates there. Looking forward to more updates in Australia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alma. Reporting from Townsville, Australia, Morgan Goodfellow, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
In other news, hospitals in Paris could have up to 90% of intensive care beds packed with COVID-19 patients as soon as next week, the system's chief warned Tuesday as France braces for new measures to slow a surge in cases. Martin Hirsch, the head of the 39 hospitals in Paris and its suburbs, told the Parisian newspaper that by around October 24, there will be a minimum of 800 to 1,000 COVID patients in intensive care, representing 70 to 90% of our current capacity, he said. The prospect puts more pressure on President Emmanuel Macron, who is widely expected to announce tighter restrictions in a primetime TV interview Wednesday night. In his latest major TV interview to mark the Bastille Day holiday in July, President Macron ordered that face masks be used in all enclosed public spaces nationwide. Since then, they have also become compulsory on the streets of Paris. Media reports have speculated that new measures could include curfews in Paris and other cities placed on maximum alert because of fast-rising COVID cases that are again straining hospitals. In Paris and other at-risk cities, bars have already been closed, access to gyms have been sharply curtailed, and stricter crowd limits set on shopping malls and other venues.
Meanwhile, thousands of North Koreans packed into Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Square to pledge their support for the government. All of them wearing masks, unlike at a military parade only 2 days earlier. Take a look.
당 대장의 긍지 높이 들어 나아갑시다.
임무를 완성하고도 사랑하는 시민을 평양에는 대가지 않고 원수님의 다양한 운동이 우리 시간
Often seen grinning at a missile launch or in command of lengthy official meetings, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has offered a glimpse of a different image, emotional and apologetic. At a weekend military parade where he showed off Pyongyang's latest and largest intercontinental ballistic missiles, Kim's voice trembled momentarily.
동지들,
하늘 같고 바다 같은 우리 인민의 너무도 크나큰 믿음을 받아 안기만 하면서 언제나 제대로 한 번 보답이 따르지 못해 정말 면목이 없습니다.
In other news, Thai protesters showed their three-finger salute from the Hunger Games movie trilogy as the royal motorcade drives past a democracy monument in Bangkok. Take a look. Now, Thailand has seen a growing movement of student-led anti-government protests in recent months, with the rally last weekend drawing 30,000 supporters, the largest demonstration since the 2014 coup. The largely leaderless youth-organized movement, partly inspired by Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests, is calling for Prime Minister Prayut's government to be dissolved, a rewrite of the 2017 military scripted constitution, as well as the scrapping of Thailand's draconian royal defamation law known as 112. Now, each charge carries a sentence of up to 15 years in jail. Authorities have so far refrained from using the law against pro-democracy activists, instead accusing them of sedition and breaking coronavirus regulations. Eagle News will be right back.
The Metro Rail Transit 7, or MRT-7, is a planned rail and road project from North Avenue, Quezon City to San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, with 14 stations, which can service 650,000 passengers daily. And very soon, the construction of the new Manila International Airport in Bulacan, Bulacan is expected to accommodate 100 million passengers annually and promises to be another significant contribution to progress in the Philippines.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Back to the news. Britain's unemployment rate has jumped to 4.5% as the coronavirus pandemic continues to destroy jobs. We have a report coming in from Erica Celestino from our EBC United Kingdom Bureau. Erica?
Yes, Alma. So the latest updates here from the United Kingdom is Britain's unemployment rate that has jumped to 4.5% as the coronavirus pandemic continues to destroy jobs, official data showed on Tuesday. The reading for the June-August period compared with an unemployment rate of 4.1% for May to July, the Office for National Statistics said in a statement. Early estimates for September, meanwhile, suggest that there is little change in the number of payroll employees in the United Kingdom, up 20,000 compared with August, the official national statistics said. Since the start of the UK pandemic in March, the number of payroll employees has dived by a net 673,000, the data showed. The latest batch of data showed that the labor market has been somewhat weaker than previously thought, and that the fallout from the COVID-19 recession is intensifying, noted Paul Dales, chief UK economist at Capital Economics Research Group. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday tightened virus control measures as the UK experiences a surge in cases. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday tightened virus control measures as the UK experiences a surge in cases. The northwest English city of Liverpool was the first area to be designated at very high risk under a new three-tiered system. From Wednesday, Liverpool will see inter-household mixing banned indoors and in private gardens, while pubs, bars, gyms, betting shops, and casinos will close. This has dealt a further huge blow to the hospitality sector and comes as the UK government's virus furlough scheme, paying the bulk of wages for millions of workers, is replaced from November by a watered-down scheme. Kate Nichols, chief executive of UK Hospitality, last week warned that more than 560,000 jobs would be lost to the sector this year as the pandemic killed trade in bars, hotels, pubs, and restaurants. Britain's death toll from the virus is the highest in Europe at almost 43,000. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I am Erica Celestino. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Erica. Disney announced a reorganization of its media and entertainment business that aims to further boost its streaming service, which has boomed during the coronavirus pandemic. The entertainment giant tapped longtime company executive Kareem Daniel to lead the media and entertainment distribution group, which will manage operations of the streaming services and manage for-profit and loss across content creation, including for movie productions, television shows, and sports programming. Chief Executive Bob Chapek said the effort is to eschew predetermined decisions on where to position an entertainment product until other options that may make more sense commercially are considered. Chapek said the move had been accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic, which has shuttered many movie theaters and spurred more subscriptions for Disney Plus and other streaming services. The overhaul aims to better meet consumer preference.
The Wall Street Journal reported that AT&T's media entertainment unit, Warner Media, is set to unveil significant job cuts in response to the economic impact of the sector from the coronavirus pandemic. The report, citing unnamed sources, said the division is seeking to cut costs by up to 20% to cope with the drop in revenue from cinema, cable subscriptions, and TV ads. This could result in thousands of layoffs at Warner Brothers Studios and TV operations, which include HBO, TBS, and TNT. Warner Media, acquired by AT&T after it fended off an antitrust lawsuit from the U.S. government, did not immediately respond to an AFP query. The division recently launched its HBO Max streaming service as part of an effort to compete with established rivals Netflix and Amazon and new services from Walt Disney and Comcast's NBC Universal. AT&T has more than 240,000 employees.
Australia called for China to clarify whether restrictions have been placed on the import of Australian coal, a move that would deal a serious blow to the country's already struggling economy. Trade Minister Simon Birmingham said he had asked via diplomatic channels whether China had instructed its companies to stop buying Australian coal, a business worth around $10 billion a year, as political punishment with relations between the two increasingly souring. Several trade publications, including S&P Global Platts, have reported that Chinese state-controlled energy providers and steel mills had received a verbal notice from Beijing to stop buying the commodity from Australia. Relations between the two countries have been peppered by trade rows and spy scandals in recent months. After Australia called for an investigation into how the coronavirus outbreak began, Beijing responded by threatening Australian wine, beef, and barley exports. A ban on Australian coal could have serious implications for the country's resource-dependent economy, which is already in its first recession in almost 30 years.
Meanwhile, China's top diplomat was in Cambodia Monday on the start of a visit both countries hope will boost relations at a time of increased tensions with the United States. Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who will also visit Malaysia, Laos, and Thailand on a regional charm offensive, signed a trade deal that will allow Cambodia to export 340 mostly agricultural products without tariffs. Beijing has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in Cambodia as part of its Global Belt and Road Initiative, but new bridges and roads have been offset by what locals see as Chinese appropriation of local assets and resources, such as in Sihanoukville. The signing of the Cambodia-China Free Trade Agreement, or CCFTA, and two other important documents regarding a project to improve a hospital and development of sewage systems in Preah Sihanouk province are also expected during Wang's visit, according to the press release. Commerce Ministry spokesman Siang Tai said bilateral trade between China and Cambodia was worth $8 billion in 2019, but this deal should push the exports up to $10 billion by 2023.
Johnson & Johnson said it had temporarily halted its COVID-19 vaccine trial because one of its participants had become sick. It said, "We have temporarily paused further dosing in all our COVID-19 vaccine candidate clinical trials, including the Phase 3 Ensemble trial, due to an unexplained illness in a study participant," according to the company in a statement. The pause means the enrollment system has been closed for the 60,000 patient clinical trial while the Independent Patient Safety Committee is convened. Johnson & Johnson said that serious adverse events such as accidents or illnesses are an expected part of any clinical study, especially large studies. Company guidelines allow them to pause a study to determine if the SAE was related to the drug in question and whether to resume study. In September, trials on the coronavirus vaccine developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University were paused after a UK volunteer developed an unexplained illness.
We'll be back for more news. Please stay tuned. Still on the news, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad declared a national catastrophe on Tuesday after inspecting crops destroyed by the wildfires that have ravaged his country's Mediterranean coastal belt. As many as 25,000 people have been forced to flee their homes, the United Nations said, in a new blow for a region which is a mainstay of support for Assad's government. The fires, which broke out in tinder-dry conditions on Friday, have destroyed more than 9,000 hectares of farmland and forest in the coastal provinces of Latakia and Tartus, as well as homes inland. In the hardest-hit province of Latakia, the UN Humanitarian Affairs Office said 3 people died and at least 70 were admitted to hospitals. Assad pledged support for residents of affected areas, especially farmers who have lost their crops. Wildfires are a regular occurrence in Syria in late summer, as they are in neighboring Israel, Lebanon, and Cyprus. But presidents say this week's fires have been on a larger scale than usual.
Meanwhile, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said Secretary General Antonio Guterres told a meeting of the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action that the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic is a dress rehearsal for the even greater climate emergency faced by all nations. Take a look.
The Secretary General addressed via video message the fourth meeting of the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action. He said the pandemic is a dress rehearsal for the even greater climate emergency faced by all nations, and told ministers that their recovery plans will determine the course for the next 30 years. The Secretary General said the world needs finance ministers to align COVID recovery and stimulus plans with the goals of the Paris Agreement and to end fossil fuel subsidies, invest in green jobs, and not bail out polluting industries. There's been a dramatic rise in disasters over the last 20 years, explained by a rise in climate-related disasters, including extreme weather events. In the last 20 years, has seen the number of major floods more than double. The report also records major increases in storms, drought, wildfires, and extreme temperature events. Over the last 20 years, major recorded disaster events claim 1.23 million lives, impacting 4.2 billion people, many on more than one occasion, resulting in approximately almost $3 trillion in global economic losses.
The UN Disaster Risk Reduction Agency report, produced with Belgium's Center for Research on the Epidemiology of Disasters, it said that there were more than 7,300 recorded disasters worldwide in the last 20 years. More than 1.2 million people died, approximately 60,000 per year, with poorer nations witnessing death rates more than 4 times higher than richer nations.
Meanwhile, firefighters battle a huge blaze on Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, which broke out on Sunday. Every year, some 50,000 tourists climb Kilimanjaro, which rises to 5,895 meters above sea level. Pascal Shalutid, an official with Tanzania's National Park Service, said the fire started at the Wona area, a rest center for climbers using Mandara and Horombo, 2 of the several routes up the mountain.
U.S. researchers are training dogs to seek out asymptomatic people who are infected with COVID-19 by teaching them to smell the odor that comes off the infected person, in hopes of eventually dispatching specially trained canines to screening checkpoints at public places like airports and schools to help identify undiagnosed COVID cases. Take a look.
Even an asymptomatic person can actually give off these odors through their pores and be able to determine this from a distance.
Scientists have long known that people sick with certain diseases emit particular odors. Different infections affect different parts of the body in different ways, often producing specific combinations of volatile compounds. Dogs have shown a remarkable ability to pick up on those airborne chemicals, detecting when people are infected with malaria, infectious bacteria, and even certain types of cancer. Now, scientists are hoping that dogs' keen sense of smell, 10,000 times better than that of humans, can help them identify people carrying COVID-19 as well.
Meanwhile, in Singapore, diners have jumped at the opportunity to have lunch on a stationary Airbus A380 parked at the city's main airport. Hundreds of passengers paid the equivalent of a budget ticket just to dine inside grounded A380 jumbos. For a hefty sum of up to 642 Singapore dollars, the first 2 seating dates sold out within half an hour. And for those seeking to bring the in-flight experience into their living rooms, Singapore Airlines is also offering home deliveries of plain meals. With the aviation industry in deep crisis due to the pandemic, airlines have turned to alternative ways to raise cash, from offering flights to nowhere to tours of aircraft.
Would you go there? Of course.
Anything for food.
That's right. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So we are going to be back tomorrow, so please do stay tuned.
Okay, see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
I'm CJ.
we live in interesting times.
This program was brought to you by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Tayong